On Saturday, April 29th, 2023, a city breathed a sigh of relief, feeling as if a curse had finally been lifted. With a Game 6 victory over the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Toronto Maple Leafs finally ended a 19-year drought consisting of 0 playoff series victories, the longest such drought in the National Hockey League. This might be surprising information to the more casual hockey fan, or those who know little about the sport. As one of the NHL's original 6 teams, the Maple Leafs are arguably more ubiquitous in culture than many other teams, and as such are probably just assumed to be a perennial powerhouse to those less familiar with the sport. But that 19-year drought was certainly felt by their fans and the people of Toronto, and the victory over the Lightning, one of the league's most consistently dominant forces in recent years, definitely felt worth celebrating. Of course, it must have stung that the Maple Leafs were then eliminated in the very next round by the Florida Panthers, but still, that first-round victory must be seen as some sort of relief to frustrated, exhausted Maple Leafs fans. A potential step in the right direction, a sign of hope for the future. And this is particularly important because the 19-year run without a playoff series victory is only one of the oppressive droughts, or as some fans again label them, curses, that the team has been enduring. There's an even larger issue at play for the beleaguered organization, one that, again, might be surprising to those who don't keep up with the sport and still think of the Maple Leafs as one of the big teams. This certainly was true for many years. They have won the second most Stanley Cup championships in league history, with 13, and have enjoyed 2 notable dynasty periods, from 1947 to 1951, and then from 1962 to 1967. But the 67 season wasn't only the end of their last dynasty. It was, to date, the last time they won the Stanley Cup, period. That means the Maple Leafs have since endured 56 seasons since their last championship, the longest such drought in NHL history. Call it bad luck, call it a curse, call it what you will. The Maple Leafs' Stanley Cup drought has remained a long-running source of frustration for their fans, many of whom have spent their entire lives dealing with this sad factor of the team's history. One would assume many fans of the team often daydream about what it would be like to finally see their beloved Maple Leafs lift Lord Stanley's Cup above their heads again, as for years this notion has, unfortunately for them, only been the stuff of fiction. Which begs an interesting question. How bad of a fictional story would a frustrated Toronto Maple Leafs fan be willing to endure, if it meant they would at least, if only for a moment, and only in the world of make-believe, finally be able to see their team once again win the big one? The year is 2008, and Paramount Pictures is ready to team with comic superstar Mike Myers to launch his next Austin Powers-esque comedy franchise with The Love Guru. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris. And in the previous episode of May-ers, I stated just how much I had in common with the man of the hour. This is a little different. We still
retracting the statement.
No, I definitely do have a lot in common. And what it is now is our mutual grief, despair, and mourning for our respective hometown hockey teams.
I know. This has been an amazing couple days for you, Chris. You're Unfortunately, your Edmonton Oilers and my Edmonton Oilers, because I told you last time I was rooting for them in your honor.
Yep.
Out of the playoffs, and you watched The Love Guru.
Yes, it has been a wild amount of emotions. Distress, and then I watched the Oilers lose.
And Chris, I hate to do this to you, but maybe you'll understand where my logic is coming from. You know what? Now I think, because now, like I said, I was going to root for the Oilers. They're out. I think I'm just going to root for Las Vegas.
I hate that.
Well, the thing is, because I always had this mentality when the Red Wings would get beat by somebody, where you say, I hope whoever beats us wins the cup. Because you at least want to lose to the Stanley Cup champions. You don't want to lose to the other losers, Like, that's the way I look at it.
I agree. For me, personally, I'm always we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but
it's actually kind of related to this episode, though. So
it is.
Talking hockey is fine.
Cool. So like, I'm definitely an Oilers fan first, then I am a hockey fan, if that makes any sense. So like, the Oilers are out. So guess what? I don't give a shit who wins the cup anymore. I really don't care.
Will you still watch all the way to the end, though?
No, I'm done.
No,
yeah, I'm done. Yeah. I don't care enough. I need skin in the game, you know. So, anyways.
Okay. Well, the reason I said this was actually related, as Chris mentioned, this is the second installment of Mike Mayers, our month dedicated to Canadian comic legend. One-time comic legend, Mike Myers. Last time we looked at Dr. Seuss's The Cat in the Hat, and this time we're looking at a movie that actually does have a huge hockey focus. Yeah. Mike Myers bringing his love of hockey in the NHL and his beloved Toronto Maple Leafs into this film, and that is 2008's The Love Guru. Chris, tell us a little bit about The Love Guru.
For sure. This one is directed by Marco Schnabel, his first and only feature. It seems to be a running thing with Mike Mayers, but he's a TV writer, but he was mostly an associate producer on Goldmember, so that's his connection to Mike. This is written by... Do you like how I'm in a first name basis with Mike Myers, by the way?
Yeah. Okay. Also, you need to like Mike, and that's another classic sports comedy.
Yeah. It is written by Mike Myers and Graham Gordy. Graham Gordy is another TV writer. No known connection to Mike Myers, by the way. The budget of the film is $62 million. In my research, I did find reports of Mike Myers' salary being upwards of $20 million for this movie. So almost a third of it maybe went to him directly. He had like the most creative control over this one. So, producer, writer, maybe shadow director. We'll get to that. Actor, obviously. But domestically, this made $32 million, and worldwide, it made just over $40 million. So big yikes on that. We didn't get any more of this classic, immediately iconic Mike Myers creation.
Well, and let's not bury the lead here. We're going to talk about our own feelings, and we don't like to give away too much in the opener.
Sure.
But let's also say, because everyone, I think, knows, those who do remember this film at all, remember that this isn't a matter of just a financial failure either. The stink around this movie when it came out. This was like a catastrophic, obviously it was a financial bomb, but what it did to Mike Myers' career and his status as a leading man and how much people were willing to put up with him, I think was also like the story of this movie for sure.
Yeah. It's I guess, could we call... I mean, it's not a career ender, technically speaking, but it is a career pauser.
And not only for Mike Myers, but for some of the other people involved, which we'll talk about. Like, I think this set a lot of people off in a negative direction who are involved with this movie. Big time. I mean, you just mentioned how... I already forgot his name. Marco Schnabel, like, never directs again after this, right? Mm-hmm. So, and like that wasn't the plan. Like, there was definitely promotional material for this where they were talking about how they were very excited about this being his debut feature, and Mike Myers said he thought he would go on to have a great career. So,
yeah, there was just a lot of promotional everything for this movie. They were kind of hitting the ground running. There's not a ton of like behind the scenes type stuff other than. Mike Myers has had this character in his mind since he created Austin Powers. It all kind of started when his dad unfortunately passed away in 1991. So he, reached out into like spiritualism and enlightenment and stuff like that. And then he started touring this character around. I guess closer to starting production on the film, where he was booking comedy clubs, dressing up as Guru Pitka, the main character, and they were advertised as an evening of spiritual enlightenment with His Holiness the Guru Pitka. This was a mix of comedy and genuine self-help. He's actually, Mike Myers is a friend of Deepak Chopra, so this was kind of a play on what Chopra does,
Yeah, because as you said, like, it was based after the death of his father. He, in particular, he started consulting self-help gurus and getting into spirituality. But in particular, he found himself really taken with like the teachings of Indian yogis. And yeah, he started reading up big time on Deepak Chopra. As they became friends. Deepak Chopra actually wrote like a novel inspired by Mike Myers, so the two became very, very close. And he decided he wanted to explore this world comedically. And you had already mentioned too, but we should reiterate it, that this is a character he had in his back pocket for a long time. I think probably the easy misconception about this movie is that this was just him looking to create a new character because Austin Powers had wrapped up.
Yeah.
But I had read, and I'm guessing you did as well, that this character was originally at one time announced to be like the fourth character in the second Austin Powers film.
Yeah.
Like it was going to be Dr. Evil, Fat Bastard, Austin, and then Guru Pitka. But he just obviously at that time realized that's a little too crowded. By the time he gets to the third film, he obviously thinks Goldmember's the more important character because he's the villain, so he still doesn't use him there. But also, so he had this character in his back pocket this whole time. He was thinking about it, but that allowed him to keep thinking about the character and like develop it and change it. And obviously, that live tour was probably a big part of that.
He has a quote here about the character and its conception. What struck me as I began meeting gurus like Gary Zukav and Deepak Chopra is how actually really funny they are. I started to realize that the whole idea of enlightenment is really, at heart, to just lighten up. Another reason he was attracted to the subject matter was, he said about his friend Steve Martin, once said the most exciting thing to do is to find comedy where comedy hadn't existed before. And I loved the idea of bringing irony and humor to the human search for happiness and love. So it was coming from I guess I want to say this is coming from a good place. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This is we'll talk about the movie proper in a little bit here, but he's not attacking this character from a cynical perspective. That's not my read on the behind the scenes and maybe his feelings, you know, of creating this world with this character, right? Like, would you agree with that?
This is a complicated discussion because I mentioned last time when I said, you know, this is not a movie I'd seen before, and I kind of just made a joke where I said, you know, all I can guess about this movie is I'm guessing it's going to be problematic. And I'm not here to say that's not the case. One thing that does hover over this film is like, you know, it's not brown face. Yeah. He's playing an American character who was raised, you know, to be a Hindu yogi or guru. But it is doing a portrayal of Hinduism. He is doing an accent. You know, it's definitely playing on stereotypes. I mean, I agree with you in that he's trying to make like a positive comedy that's about, you know, how to get past your traumas and and you know that. So I agree with you there. It's not cynical to that degree. I think if people are put off by this and are upset by some of the stereotypical humor of it and some of the portrayal, I won't argue with them for a second. This goes back to our discussion last time about how one of Mike Myers' comedic icons is Peter Sellers. And I mentioned how one negative thing I think he maybe took from Peter Sellers is that Peter Sellers had this reputation of being kind of hard to work with. And I thought maybe Mike Myers took that too much to heart, where he got that in his head, where, you know, great comedians are supposed to be difficult because they, you know, we know our vision is so clear. It's our way or the highway on set, you know, and so he kind of, sometimes we've read stories about how he can be like that. But another area where I wonder if this was like him trying again to be Peter Sellers, because obviously Peter Sellers' most iconic character is Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther films, and you can say Mike Myers scratched that itch with the Austin Powers movies. And then the other like really iconic Peter Sellers comedy, also from Blake Edwards, is 1968's The Party. And Chris, I don't know how much you know about The Party, but The Party is a movie where Peter Sellers plays an Indian character named Kundi Bakshi, and it is brownface. And it's a complicated movie because if you look it up, you'll see almost every like movie critic, you know, it was a huge hit at the time in most like, you know, AFI lists and things. It still comes up as one of the funniest comedies ever made. It's a very well respected, very well loved movie. But then you have to grapple with the fact that it's also Peter Sellers doing brownface and playing an Indian man. Mm-hmm. But one thing that often gets lost in that discussion is when people today talk about how, you know, problematic and how offensive that is the fact that that movie was actually very, very popular in India. So people always say, like, well, that was so wrong of him to do. And his defense, even at the time, would have been, they loved it in India. You know, like the prime minister was like a huge fan of it. He like would quote it in political meetings. Famous Indian directors wanted to work with Peter Sellers after that, and they wanted to cast him as Indian characters because they thought he did such a good job. So he like kind of really got away with it, you know? And I think Mike Myers might have looked at that and said, well, everyone loves that comedy. He did this. It was beloved. I'm beloved. I can probably do that as well. So I don't know. I just think like maybe he didn't give this as much thought as he could have. Like,
yeah,
and
but
time has borne that out a little bit, but.
And maybe again, I think again it's a complicated question, especially when it comes to like cultural appropriation and stuff like that. Because I mean, you know, we are a little bit more left leaning, but also I can say personally, like sometimes I see the wrong people mad about cultural appropriation. Do you know what I'm trying to say? You know, like I'm like I don't know. I guess. It's not an excuse, obviously, but when you're seeing mostly white people get up in arms about things, sometimes it is a little strange. You know what I mean? Like, am I wrong?
Yeah, you're not wrong, but I also think like white people also have like the largest media voice already, so it's their voice you hear a lot anyways. And that's the thing. Like I saw, you know, I like you. I read all the background of this movie, and I saw that there definitely was concern from the Hindu community about this movie before it came out. They asked if it could be screened for them. I don't know why Paramount made that so difficult to where they were going to give them some kind of they were just saying, can you send us like a screener or something, and like, no, you have to come to this one screening we're putting on. But apparently like that organization who watched it ended up feeling like it was okay, you know, they weren't too offended by it. But certainly there were other like Hindu leaders who I don't know if they ever came out and said anything after the fact, but certainly before the fact they were upset about it. I guess I want to talk about it now because when we get into the review, I feel like we don't have to talk about this anymore.
Yeah, sure.
Because I will say, I don't think it's a great choice for Mike Myers to play this character and like do like this take on it. Right. But I'm not going to have that be like the overall arc of like, that's not the overall point of my review ultimately, because it could have just been like, look, let me just say that's annoying, but now let's talk about the movie just as a comedy.
Totally.
So that's kind of how I want to kind of preface it.
And I guess well I'll bring my bit of review into here then, I guess, because it is apt. Sometimes I felt that Guru Pitka is more of a Deepak Chopra impression. It's more of a, you know, lampoon on pseudoscience shysters in a way, you know, more than it is a Hindu culture. Even though there is visual, don't get me wrong, there's visual stuff, and, you know, there's elephants, and then there's like cushions that are motorized that look like a magic carpet, and like I'm not naive, like I understand, but I felt like sometimes
uncomfortable Bollywood moments with Mike Myers and Jessica Alba.
Yes. Those probably the most egregious.
Yeah.
But you know, I definitely felt this was less cynical, more let's satirize these inspirational speaker type people. And I kind of get that, you know?
The only reason I have a hard time agreeing fully with you on that, and it's not that I completely disagree, but where I would like put up a little bit of a defense against that is the fact that I don't think Mike Myers thinks these people are charlatans. Like, he loves Deepak Chopra. Like,
don't get me wrong. That we'll get to that when I bring this up again in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
So that, and I guess like because we're trying to get out of the way here, what I was kind of surprised about is the movie never does the obvious tact of, if you were going to play this character, because Mike Myers is not a dumb man, I don't think. I think he probably had to expect there would be some like backlash and some eyebrows raised at this character.
Sure.
What I'm surprised he didn't do at all in the movie is have anybody in the movie verbalize those concerns. You know, like that seemed like I was waiting for that to be a point of the movie where people are saying, "Aren't you like a white dude? You know, like, why are you like that?" Could have been that could have been like the obvious joke to kind of undercut it and allow like that criticism and that humor to come through. You know, I think of why, and I know there are people who are upset by this, but why ultimately the Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder was not as problematic as it maybe seems on the surface level, because he's actually playing an idiot, you know, who doesn't realize what he's doing is wrong. Like, he's making fun of stupid actors. Yeah, right? It's not a traditional racist blackface performance to the degree that instead he's making fun of somebody who wouldn't realize why blackface is wrong. And the movie kind of makes that clear, you know. And so I thought maybe the Love Guru would do that, but no, he just kind of completely leans into this idea that this character was, was raised by another guru. And that's why he talks like this. That's why he has this lifestyle. And so that was just kind of surprising to me. But hey, I didn't write it. I'm not Graham Gordy.
Yeah. Who is Trev?
I don't know.
Literally. Yeah. Who is Graham Gordy? Where is he? I think that's where we should, put a pin in that for now, and then we'll come. When we talk about the movie proper, it might come up again.
There's other things to talk. There's other things to talk about with the Love Guru besides that. Surprisingly enough,
100%. Other people who didn't see really anything problematic with the film was Mike Myers' producing partner, Michael DeLuca, who had a quote here: "Mike Myers, unlike a lot of comic actors of his generation, creates entire worlds in his stories. He starts with a single idea and then builds an entire original universe around it." Sidebar, Trev, we love that word, universe. We love it. It's what feeds our podcast. He goes on to say, "You really can't compare his movies to any other movie comedies out there because they always contain something people have never seen before." You got that right. You got that right. You got that right. It's funny because, again, people were on board to make this movie. The movie was leaked a day before by a person that worked at the distribution company, who was eventually sentenced to 6 months in jail, which is crazy. And then Paramount Film Group president John Lesher and production president Brad Weston were fired almost immediately after this movie was made, and a couple other bombs that they had. But again, the Love Guru, from the inception of the idea, I don't know. This was destined. This was always destined to fail.
Well, no matter how hard they tried too, right? Because we didn't mention how intense the promotional push was for this.
Totally.
Mike Myers went on American Idol as Guru Pitka. Cinnabon, because Cinnabon's featured in the movie, Cinnabon made their employees wear Love Guru shirts for a while. Yeah. This had tie-ins with other companies. The entire support of the National Hockey League to this movie. There's scenes that they're filming on the ice because they did get to film during some exhibition game, I think, for 10 minutes or something. And all of the corporate logos are not digitally changed. There's a PSP logo. Remember those? There's so many ads and brands in this movie that everybody gave their permission. And I was pretty shocked by how much cooperation by the NHL there was, because there is even lampooning of the sport. And the league is notoriously close-minded. That's what I'll say. Gary Batman Gary Batman, as Joe Biden likes to say.
Anyway, I want to thank Commissioner Gary Batman for being here as well. And
they are also, though, a league that needs any help they can get. Getting kind of attention and ratings.
You're right.
So yeah,
you're right. I think honestly that's it. That's all I got for production stuff. This one was Mike Myers, height of his powers after Wayne's World, awesome powers, Shrek. Guys, if this is your first episode jumping in, we talked about the Dr. Seuss and we talked about our feelings on Mike Myers personally. So definitely go listen to that one if you don't know, if you haven't already. But this was, like we said, almost a career killer.
When it comes to love,
I was put on this earth to spread a message of love.
One man is in a position to help.
It's my time to shine!
Take a look at this. The Toronto Maple Leafs will pay you $2 million if you can get Darren Roanoke back with his wife in time to win the Stanley Cup.
The second best guru in the world is coming to town.
How do you do? Shrimp?
What'd you call me?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Name?
You are a midget.
Looks like I'm gonna have to shove these love beats someplace special.
Nice hat. I had a hat like that once. Then my mom got a job.
Paramount Pictures and Spyglass Entertainment present
Rajneesh, I'd like an alligator soup and make it snappy. Because alligators are snappy, and at the same time I want it prompt.
Dicker!
Yes?
What's capital Thailand?
Bangkok?
Exactly! Oh!
Mike Myers, Jessica Alba.
So, Jane, boyfriend?
No.
Girlfriend?
Well, I mean, there was one time in college.
Really?
What was that?
I didn't hear anything.
Justin Timberlake.
Someone ordered a special Quebec pizza, you know, like in the porno.
The Love Guru.
I'd like to thank the Academy. Wow, these things are heavy. Yeah.
Put me down, a-hole.
Okay.
The Guru Pitka is tasked with revitalizing the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey team. The team has been plagued with losses for decades, and their star player suffers a marital tragedy that throws him off his game. In order for Pitka to become the next Deepak Chopra, he must help the team actualize their potential to win the Stanley Cup.
A very simple version of the Love Guru story.
Yeah.
I'll go first on this one, Chris, because this is another first-time watch for me, and I will flat out admit this was a movie I avoided at the time and have avoided like the plague ever since, based purely on reputation alone. Do I feel like that avoidance was merited? Yes. Boy, do I. So I think any people who have a movie podcast, or any people just like to talk about movies in general, have a tendency to dip into hyperbole. You and I are both guilty of it. You know, we'll say we'll take things to the extreme for the sake of entertainment or for the sake of argument. But I swear to you, this is not hyperbole when I say I consider this not only to be the worst movie we've done on this podcast so far, but maybe one of the worst, like 10 worst movies I've seen in my life. And I know what you're thinking. I know you're saying, like...
Yeah, hold on.
Well, no, and here, I'm going to... Because I know Chris is going to come in and say, Trev, you watch all those, like, Asylum movies, and you watch, like, Neil Breen movies. And you're right. And, like, clearly those are technically worse. Well, I don't know. Not all of them. But you have to understand what I'm saying is... I watch those on a curve, right? Because when you're watching like those kind of shitty movies like that you watch for a shitty movie night with your friends, you understand these are movies made with like super low budgets. They're campy. They're like, they are what they are. This is a movie that is full of talent. This is from a major studio. This is a comedic presence who, like you said, like not too long before this was at the height of his powers. And every moment of this movie strikes me as they should have known better. Like I sat there so stone-faced and just so flabbergasted. This honestly made me feel bad about how harsh we were towards Cat in the Hat. I was like, Cat in the Hat, that's not looking so bad. Like I'll get into more details. Like it's not just the offensive part of it. Like we said, we wanted to get that out of the way, like in terms of like that element of it. But even beyond that, this isn't a movie. This is a war crime. Like it's just this is the kind of movie that honestly you watch it and it makes you wonder. Like, were you wrong about Mike Myers ever being funny? You know, that's how bad this is. And it's like, I'm not surprised this basically ended his career as a leading man, as a feature film leading man. And honestly, you watch this movie and I kind of go, good. He deserves it because it's just so misguided. I swear to God, I was thinking if I show up for this record and Chris says he likes this movie, I'm canceling the podcast on the spot. But so tell me how you feel about Love Guru.
Well, you're gonna be stuck with me for a while because I don't like this movie. I have a distinct core memory of this film from 2008. Mm-hmm. I never went to go see it. I remember being turned off by the trailers even at that time. And at that time I was just I guess I was in university at that time. Yeah. And then a buddy of mine was like, I rented this and I watched it with my brother. And I now have second thoughts about my brother because he was laughing throughout the entire thing. And I think he might be adopted. And he was like, Chris, you got to come over and let me show you how this movie ends. And we have a core memory and spoilers, people, for the Love Guru.
You talking about the elephants?
Yes. I'm talking about the two elephants in the room that are banging on the ice during the Stanley Cup final game as a distraction. And I will never not remember those elephants. So that was my history with the movie. I don't remember if I actually watched the whole thing. I can't remember if we just kind of skipped through. But yeah, this is like the end of, I guess, Mike Myers is like his humor working. You know what I mean? Like he's got 3 types of jokes in this movie, and it's Indian names sound funny, so here are a couple of them. Okay, there's Guru Tuggin My Puda. There's Guru Such a Big Naba. There's the technique, the ancient technique of how to hurt a guy. And the constant words, it's like a greeting, but it's instead of namaste, it's Mariska Hargitay. So there's that. The next one is Vern Troyer short jokes, constantly. Which I will say, the one and only laugh that I actually did have a pretty big laugh at was they walk into his office and it's like actually like mini office. I did like that joke, but that's
I read
it.
that Vern Troyer actually kept a lot of that stuff for his own house.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
that's funny. And then the other one is gross out humor for just the sake of it. So there's like a piss-soaked mop fight for no reason. There's tea going through Ben Kingsley's nostrils. There's just dick jokes, of course, and then the elephant sex. So I think this movie just kind of tested my patience at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's kind of like I'm just kind of I still don't think this is a cynical character. And what I mean by that is that I think that's my biggest problem with the movie, other than just like it kind of falling flat on every single joke. But I think there's an issue here when I said before that he's lampooning pseudoscience, but also you came back right away saying, no, I think he's championing it. And that's the point. That's what I mean. It clashes with the satire. Is he a cheater or is he a charmer? You know, and it doesn't really fit because there's an obvious like innocence to Guru Pitka as a character, but also he seems well intentioned, but then he's constantly being super juvenile, you know, and I don't necessarily find him like super annoying, and maybe that's because it just came off of Cat in the Hat. I'm not sure, because like Cat in the Hat was like aggravating to watch, but this character just at least seemed like he had his heart in the right place. And do you understand what I'm getting at here?
Well, I found this movie much more aggravating than Cat in the Hat, if only because Cat in the Hat was at least visually like compelling, and and so like I remember we laughed a lot about. And I still think it's true that Cat in the Hat, you can kind of suddenly fall into a mindset of like looking at it as like a bizarre, dark, twisted horror film or something.
Yeah.
And like make it entertaining in your head. This was just like mind-boggling to me. Like I've long said, in terms of like bad movies, there's really nothing worse than a bad comedy, because a bad horror movie becomes funny, a bad sci-fi movie becomes funny, a bad action movie becomes funny. But a bad comedy is just the death of humor, right? And you're just sitting there, and I swear I never cracked a smile. You said you had one laugh. I'll tell you the only joke that came close to getting me to almost crack a smile. There's as we alluded to in the beginning, Mike Myers is not playing an Indian character. He's playing a white child who was orphaned and was raised in a Hindu community by Ben Kingsley's character, Guru Tuggin My Puda. Ben Kingsley is doing brownface. But,
and funny, Oscar-winning for Gandhi,
yes, for Gandhi,
turning to cross-eyed Tuggin My Puda. It's quite the career trajectory here.
So there's a scene where they do a flashback and you see Mike Myers as a young boy, and it's this like horrifying nightmare fuel CGI thing where it's just Mike Myers' adult head on the body of a young child. That's not what I found funny.
Yeah.
But there's a part like a little bit later where he's talking to Tuggin My Puda, and he mentions how his parents were killed in a car wreck, I believe.
That's
and Tuggin My Puda says, like, makes some kind of joke out of it, and they just cut back to Mike Myers, and he just says, like, kind of under his breath, like, oh, yeah, that's hilarious, my parents are dead.
Speak of your parents.
They are both dead. They were missionaries.
And what did they do before then?
They were dog stylists.
So, let me get this straight. They were into doggy style before the missionary position.
It's hilarious. My parents are dead. Thanks.
And it's like, that's the kind of joke I actually like that kind of subtle undercutting of someone being insensitive. And that's like the only moment I thought like, oh, there was like just a little spark of actual humor there. But the rest of this, it's really the kind of movie where you watch it and you can't help but wonder the whole time. You do get distracted thinking, was everyone on set aware of how bad this is? Like, they had to be, right? Like, you just wonder, like, could they have honestly been fooling themselves into thinking this stuff was funny? Because it's just so clearly inert and dead on the page, in the moment. You know, I'm sure in the edit, you had to imagine that. I feel like that guy who leaked this movie the day before, he was trying to do it as like a public service. He was like trying to get the warning out early, because this is about as like big of a stinker as you can get. And it really is. it really does represent the dangers of unchecked success.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Because you said like the height of his powers. Well, yes, he's coming off a Cat in the Hat, which was a flop, right? But still, this is like post Austin Powers. Obviously, he had the Wayne's World films. Shrek has proven to be a gigantic franchise. He has the clout to get this kind of movie made, but more importantly, he also has the clout to where no one's going to tell him when an idea is bad.
Yeah.
No one's going to tell him, hey, you shouldn't do that. Hey, this is too much. You know, the thing about the Wayne's World movies is it's not just Mike Myers. It's Mike Myers and Dana Carvey. You have two very strong comedic voices and a team of very talented SNL writers. That's a real team effort there. With the first Austin Powers, which I think is the strongest one of the three, you can tell he's like holding back a lot of that kind of like, we said there's some juvenile stuff in it, but he's kind of more interested in like the spy satire, and he wants to really get that first movie right to make sure this can become a franchise.
Totally.
You know? And then as the series goes on, by the time you get to Goldmember, you see more of that like that 12-year-old juvenile sense of humor coming to the forefront. And now you get here, and as you said, it's really that's just the main focus. And it's a real bummer.
Yeah, like everybody at this point in 2007, 2008 when they're making this movie, everybody's constantly blowing smoke up Mike Myers' butt, and ego got the best of him. That's has to have been what happened. Does Mike Myers need Jay Roach? Like Jay Roach, I know Goldmember goes off the rails, for sure, but I still think that Jay Roach was a good compliment for him. I think they worked really well together.
I think he needs someone like Jay Roach more than he needs a Marco Schnabel, because this movie is not visually interesting, but also, like I said, I think you can just tell that, much like we said with Bo Welch and Cat in the Hat, how much of a director was Marco Schnabel on this movie?
Well, not a lot, because actually I have this here. He says about Mike Myers, about them having a unique vocabulary and rhythm. He says, Mike is an amazing improviser. Each scene is actually very tightly thought out before we got on set, and then that new ideas will emerge. To keep things fresh, Mike is constantly throwing out different lines and different reactions. His mind is just constantly thinking of ways to make things funnier and better. Yeah, I mean, we've seen enough movies where they've relied on improv, and I think it's just like sometimes such a death knell. So many comic performers think they're the funniest at that point in time, and I understand, like, there's an excitement to being on set and being in character and thinking you have a good line and thinking you're having a good joke, and you get a reaction from the camera guy, you know what I mean? And then they all think, oh yeah, that's a winner. Let's keep riffing. And sometimes no, comedy is precise. There's a reason why stand-up comics will tour for a year and a half before shooting their special. Like, they gotta get it down. Improv is not always the way to go. And in this time of 2008, let's bring even, like, it's like the Judd Apatow effect. In that mid-aughts, it was like that was the way to do comedy. It was riffing, it was improv, it was let these actors just do what they need to do. And I think maybe that is also a sign of the times for why this movie just kind of shit the bed so hard. Like maybe he's learning the long lesson for modern comedies at that time,
Yeah. Well, I think another part of it, which I wish comedians like him would realize, and I think some of them do, but this is like, you can look at a movie like this and realize, again, this is the proof that some of them don't quite get it, is that there's a big difference between what plays in the room and what will play in a movie, like on a screen. Because you're right, like you just said, like he might have made a joke and everyone in the room laughs, but that's the thing, like if you're in a room with Mike Myers dressed as this character, right, with the big makeup nose and like the curly mustache and the long hair in his costume, you might just start laughing at the absurdity of it.
Totally.
Like that might, like in the room, it might be very funny. Same with when he went to those small comedy clubs and showed up unannounced and was just like, suddenly they had a surprise appearance for this character, Guru Pika. Someone might start laughing just at how ridiculous and nonsensical it is. Yeah. And then that laughter becomes contagious in a room and everyone starts laughing. That doesn't mean when you film it and project it, 9 or 10 months later after you've made the film, it's going to play in a theater. It's probably not. You have to be there in the moment for it to probably even be close to being funny, because otherwise it is just like this comic black hole. And you're right, because like you mentioned the three kind of jokes. I was so surprised because I do consider, you go back and look at him as an SNL performer. You go back and look at him, at the height of Austin Powers. And he's clearly this like super talented guy who can do a lot of different kinds of comedy. And I was so shocked at how much of the jokes in this movie were not just the Indian name puns, but all the names of his like books that he's written, all the seminars he puts up on screen, all the different like acronyms he has. They're all just like super old jokes I've already heard in my life.
Totally.
You know,
totally.
They're like truck stop t-shirt jokes basically. And it's just like, why does he think we would still find this funny in 2008? I don't know. It felt lazy.
It's lazy.
Yeah, it is. It's super lazy and half-assed. Yeah, that's the really disappointing. Well, everything's disappointing about it, but that was like one of the most disappointing things to me is that it seemed like he came up with the character. He thought the character was funny. He thought the general concept was funny, but he didn't really want to put in the work of making this character as hilarious as the Austin Powers characters are.
Yeah, you know,
he thought the premise did the work for him. I think
totally. I think we got to talk about some of these cast members here.
Yeah.
Because Mike Myers isn't only to blame. Real quick, Trevor, what are your thoughts on pristine actress Jessica Alba?
You know, I've never been a Jessica Alba person. I know there was going to be people are going to like roll their eyes at this, and they're going to say, he's just whatever, man. But she's just never been my type, you know? I get that she's objectively attractive, but, you know, there's just some people who you know, like the whole world loves, but they're just not your type, right? So she's never done it for me on that level, and then I've never really been a fan of her as an actress, you know, like.
And we don't like making fun of actors.
We don't like making fun of actors. I would never do that. I would never shit talk an actor.
But she is objectively terrible in everything.
Yeah. She's never
in everything.
Over all the years, she's never quite improved, right?
No.
Like it started, she was rough on Dark Angel.
Mm-hmm.
But she was attractive enough that they're like, well, we're still going to try and make her a movie star.
Yep.
And then she's terrible as Sue Storm.
Yep.
She's bad in this. And this is like we mentioned earlier that
she's hot. She's hot in Sin City.
She's hot in Sin City, but I mean,
that's it.
You know, that's it. Yeah. We said earlier that this movie wasn't necessarily a career killer, but it was a career pauser. I would say like this movie actually, and I mentioned that it's not just Mike Myers. I think this movie really dings a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think she gets a lot of that too. Like you look at her, her film career was on what you would have to consider at least a somewhat of an upward trajectory heading into this, right? Like she was getting cast in. Well, maybe this is where it was starting to plateau. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
I think
those
like,
two Fantastic Four movies right before this one.
Yeah, I mean, but people forget that Fantastic Four 1 was successful enough to get number 2, right? I think the fact that number 2 didn't really set the world on fire, then followed by this. And then you look at her filmography after this, and she kind of just becomes like a Robert Rodriguez regular. You know, suddenly it's like,
right.
If there was a point where she was a rising star and it felt like, well, she's going to be headlining these like giant movies, you have to consider it to be somewhat of a step down where suddenly she's just a character in like the Machete films, you know, and popping up in a smaller role in like the Sin City sequel and things like that. So I don't know, like,
isn't she like an incredibly successful businesswoman now? Isn't she like a mogul almost?
I would hope so, because she doesn't, I mean, she still acts, but nothing, although I did just find out today, which I didn't know, and I don't know if you knew this, that she like starred in the Bad Boys spin-off TV show that ran for 2 seasons on some network I've never heard of.
Oh, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, they're Gabrielle Union's character, Marcus's sister, like she got a TV show.
That was that's a spin-off?
Yeah, Jessica Alba was her partner. Yeah.
LA's finest.
LA's finest, yeah.
That is bizarre. I didn't realize that was an actual spin-off. I thought that was just a Gabrielle Union show. But
so here's the other thing we'll say about Jessica Alba, because we don't like to shit talk actors.
No.
But we already said that she's pretty terrible and everything.
She's the worst.
Here's a key element of her. Like, if you don't agree with us that she's like not a great actress, fine. If you think she's fine, whatever. But I hope you'll come with us when we say this. She's not funny.
No, God, no.
She does not seem to have comedic timing, and that's very shown here. Like, you think of how well Heather Graham or Elizabeth Hurley like were able to hang with Mike Myers, and Jessica Alba does not have that.
You know who I was thinking of during this was because like there's a romantic subplot here, right? Like there's something because between Guru Pitka and Jessica Alba's character, they have somewhat of a romantic thing going on. And what I kept thinking of, who's way better at this, Christina Applegate.
Oh yeah,
that's what you need, because you understand when somebody like that is going for a total idiot. You know, like it works in that movie. I also think the Anchorman movies, well, first of all, are, you know, comedic masterpieces, but well, especially the first one. But I would say that movie is so wild, and there's something about this one that obviously it does get wild, but would you agree with me that this doesn't go wild enough?
It's weird. Like, I don't know how to even describe this movie, dude, other than saying I hated it. Like,
okay.
It just like, you're right. And it just like hovers in this weird world where it's not surreal enough to hit the heights of that kind of, I mentioned last time the kind of comedies that like really do it for me. Stuff like a Black Dynamite or Wet Hot American Summer, which have that kind of like Adult Swim kind of nonsensical surrealism to them.
Totally.
And I think even like, Austin Powers did that well. This like keeps hinting at it, but never pushes through. It just always defaults to, oh, here's a good time to make another dick joke. Like,
yeah,
that's kind of where it always falls. And also, I will say this, and I know maybe this is like a cheap criticism or whatever. I don't care. I just watched The Love Guru. Give me a break. I get that this is the case with these movies. I get it's a comedy. I'm not supposed to care, but I'm sorry. I do not for 1 second believe that this character would have any kind of attraction to Guru Pitka and be into him. And the problem is the way the movie sells it, to where she already feels that way. She's a fan of his, and she's already like, she's into him. She can't wait to meet him. She's excited. She basically has a crush on him before they meet. And she's like looking, when she's like, I'm hiring him to help the guy on my team, but really I'm also like interested in him. If the movie had at least put in the work to have her at the beginning be like, this guy's ridiculous, like, I can't stand this guy, he's annoying, I'll stick with him because he might be able to help my player. And then because he actually starts to make a difference, she starts to see something and it starts to fall for him. That's what a good movie does.
Yeah.
This is again Mike Myers' ego, right? This is Mike Myers saying, even me as Guru Pitka would be just undeniable to Jessica Alba. That's what he's trying to say. And
totally.
Sorry, it doesn't sell at all.
Another reason why I go back to even the Apatow way of filmmaking, and maybe that infecting Mike Myers' head, is that he hires Romani Malco as the title character of the hockey player. What's his name again?
Darren Roanoke.
Darren Roanoke. And, he starred in The 40-Year-Old Virgin. He was also in Blades of Glory. So I'm feeling like maybe, again, that infection is what kills it as well, because again, his character, the whole crux of the movie is this guy's character with his, I guess, ex-girlfriend at this point, played by Megan Good.
Wife.
What? Oh yeah, right. They are married. I've already forgotten. The whole emotional center of the movie is that he can't play hockey well anymore because he's traumatized by his wife leaving him for Jacques Lecoq, whatever, played by Justin Timberlake. And it's like his character's just not well defined. It also doesn't make any sense that on a narrative level that this guy got bad at hockey before the playoffs, but yet they are in the final round of the playoffs. So they actually did pretty good for 3 rounds. They did better than the Toronto Maple Leafs in real life and the Oilers.
It's this weird thing in the movie where, first of all, let me just say another thing I wrote down, Chris, and I don't know if this like got to you as well, because this movie, like, we know Mike Myers is a huge hockey fan. He's trying to pay homage to the Maple Leafs and to the NHL in this movie.
Yeah.
We're watching the Stanley Cup Finals, and Game 5 is in the same city as Game 4.
I know.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, that wouldn't be the case. And it's funny because I brought that up, and my girlfriend was watching this movie with me. She's like, that's your problem with this movie? And I was like, no, it's just that's the first thing I felt like saying something about.
No, but it is a reason to shit on the movie even more, because you're right. He is bringing this movie to bring awareness to his love of the game. Yeah. And he's getting the game wrong.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to also say about that is, like, it was really weird because you just made the point about how, like, it doesn't really track that he's been bad at hockey for a while, but they've made it to the finals.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously a lot of the hockey stuff in this is ridiculous, but also they'll do things later to where, like, he'll be out of a game or something, or he has to leave the game because he gets nervous again.
Yeah.
And so you expect that the other, like, the LA team, it's LA, isn't it?
It is LA, yes.
Yeah. You'd expect LA to just, like, destroy the Maple Leafs. And then they always show it's like, oh, LA is beating them by like 1 goal. And it's like, okay, so actually they do okay without him.
Yeah. And they go to Game 7.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally broken on the smallest story details about what the concept of the movie is. And again, it's not really my rule book, of my rule set and things that go off and make me frustrated. But it is something. If your main plot is about the NHL, you got to get the details right. You got to get the details right. They also have elephants having sex on the rink. So I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's all over the place. I mentioned Megan Good. I really like looking at Megan Good. She had a stinker of a 2008, eh? This and Saw 5.
Oh, yeah, that's it's kind of.
And then The Unborn. Oh, Megan Good.
That's really telling when you say what was your best movie of that year, and you go Saw 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read that Deepak Chopra defended this movie before it came out. I mean, first of all, it makes sense. He's his buddy, right? But then he was quoted later, just even a couple weeks later, saying it wasn't a good attempt at humor.
No, you don't say.
Yeah, I like
Well,
that.
speaking of that, we should talk also about Jacques Lecoq.
Yes,
Jacques
please.
Lecoq Grande, Justin Timberlake. So why is Justin Timberlake in this movie? Well, what people need to remember, because I was thinking of the timeline of this, and sure enough, this is how it shakes out.
Yeah.
This movie's in 2008. What happened in 2006, Chris?
Oh, Shrek the Third.
Not just Shrek the Third, more importantly, in December of 2006. So you're right, Shrek the Third has Justin Timberlake giving a comedic voice performance. But in December of 2006,
yes,
Justin Timberlake does a little SNL skit
Yes.
called "Dick in a Box" with the Lonely Island Boys, and it is a huge viral hit. And suddenly Hollywood perks up and says, is this guy the next comic star? He's already dabbled in acting, at this point, and he's already been fairly good in he was good in I thought he was good in Alpha Dog. He's good in Black Snake Moan. I don't really remember him in Southland Tales, but that movie's like a nothing burger to me. But he's shown his chops, right? But because of Dick in a Box and because of his friendship with Andy Samberg in Lonely Island, I think this was I definitely think Love Guru was kind of like, let's test these waters.
Yeah.
Because he's basically like as you said, the plot and the story hinges on Rami Malek, but Justin Timberlake is the other big comedic character in this movie. And I think this was definitely a Hollywood trial run to say, could he be like the next Will Ferrell, Mike Myers, Jim Carrey? Could this be his secondary career? And the answer clearly is no.
No.
After this, if he acts again after this, he does some more comedy, but he kind of returns to being more concerned with trying to work with great directors and more dramatic or comic dramas. So he goes back to doing things like The Social Network and Trouble with the Curve and Inside Llewyn Davis.
Yeah, I like how you conveniently leave out that he's going to star as Boo Boo in Yogi Bear.
Yeah, But again, that's just voice work,
I know.
And that's the thing is he's not aggressively unfunny in this and what he's doing, but what he's being asked to do is not giving him any favors. You said everything in this is boiled down to one joke. He's a one joke character. He has a big dick.
Yeah,
that's it.
And a goofy French Canadian accent.
Did someone order the special Quebec pizza? Like in the porno.
Who is this in my house? Whoa!
Looks like he's smuggling a schnauzer. Yeah.
Let me show you how.
Down, boy.
The cardinal sin of the Love Guru is it's just unfunny. Mm-hmm. And I think, like you said, it's the worst kind of bad movies are bad comedies because they're objectively bad. You know what I mean? Like there's something, we've talked about this in the past, and especially privately, but about how comedy and horror movies dig deep into something primal. Something knee-jerk. You either laugh or you don't. You're either scared or you're not. And I can't imagine how this movie played for the tens of people that went to go see it. It had to have been silence. Right? Unless they were just dumb heads that went to go see it.
Well, we've talked before. So you and I have looked at movies in the past where one of us likes it and the other one doesn't, or neither of us are hot on it. But we find a lot of people online who are very passionately defending it.
Yeah.
And this movie does not have that. This movie's you can find people that say I think it's not as bad as other people say, but even the audience got it with this one. They're like, no, thank you. And the feeling you get watching this movie is because we mentioned some of the cast, but very, very funny people keep popping up in this movie.
Yeah.
And you just end up like feeling bad for like all of them. Like, you know, you're talking again about, and not to, well, funny people and just talented actors. Like Ben Kingsley does not need this, you know? It's funny. I remember when Ben Kingsley got cast in Iron Man 3, there were people surprised and like, I can't believe Ben Kingsley would do like a Marvel comic book movie. And that just proves nobody realized he'd already been in like The Love Guru. Like apparently this guy does not care that much. He likes to work, you know?
Totally.
But I don't want to see Sir Ben Kingsley playing Guru Tugin Maputa, a character who's cross-eyed because he masturbated too much and now makes his students fight each other with pee-soaked mops. You know,
Yeah.
I don't need that in my life.
You don't need John Oliver playing Dick Pants?
No, yeah, I was just about to bring that up. Like that's the key to, if you want to understand the humor of this movie. Do you think it's funny that John Oliver plays a character named Dick Pants? You probably don't, which means you're not going to find this movie very funny.
Which is funny because the Austin Power movies do play on these types of jokes, right? Like and like a lot of vagina is really funny. You know what I mean? Like
but Austin Powers, Chris, is making fun of the fact that those names were in James Bond movies.
You're so right. Like Xenia Onatopp. Totally.
Yeah.
You're right. Okay, that's why the joke works. Okay.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Chris, did you feel bad for Vern Troyer at a certain point?
See that I think I dabbled with feeling bad.
Yeah.
Because I think I don't want to say he's used to it, but I think that I know, or it sounded like he and Mike Myers did have a pretty good relationship.
But like I'm sure they did. I mean, but that's the thing, you said he's used to it, but like Mini-Me, the jokes weren't all about the fact that he was little. You know, like that wasn't the comedic crux of Mini-Me. But that's it here. Like it is just constantly, and that's the weird thing is because you mentioned, and we've talked about how everything else about Guru Pitka is all about positivity and being nice. And then he's just an asshole to this guy.
Yeah, he's
like
mean.
He's just so malicious to Vern Troyer. Makes nothing but short joke after short joke. Yeah.
Well, his name is Coach Cherkov.
Yeah. And I want to round out the cast discussion with like the two performers who I thought would maybe be like the saving grace for this. I'm sure you know where I'm heading with this because when they pop up, you're like, oh, I bet all their stuff's going to be funny. And unfortunately, it's just not really. Yeah. And that is Stephen Colbert and Jim Gaffigan as the two NHL announcers, like the Hockey Night in Canada announcers. They're the ones who probably come the closest to being funny, I suppose, because like the general idea of Stephen Colbert's character being a recently recovering drug addict, but clearly getting back on a drug bender through it all, it feels like it would be a good SNL skit. Like it kind of reminded me. Remember the awesome ESPN skits with Will Forte and Jason Sudeikis?
Oh yeah.
Like it kind of reminded me of that, but it's just not quite the same. And I did read, I don't know if you saw this as well, Chris, that apparently those scenes were like entirely improvised because this was being filmed like during a writer's strike, and so they couldn't write those scenes. So that was just like Colbert and Jim Gaffigan like kind of improvising all that, which makes you think it would be funnier, but it's still not.
Again, it goes back to my improvising thing. Improvisation is not always great. It's mostly not. We've all been to improv shows, guys. They're not great. And if you're an improv person, guess what? You're not that funny.
And then we should mention some of the cameos. You know, we get Jessica Simpson showing up in this, which is heavily dating the film.
Yes.
There's Val Kilmer showing up, also unfortunately dating the film in a different way.
Yeah.
The Kanye West cameo, you know,
that made me laugh.
I get that. I'll give it that. You know, at least they cut to like the hockey crowd and him and Mike Myers are together. They probably should have pushed that a little bit further. They should have had like someone hand Kanye West a mic and Mike Myers slap it out of his hand or something. But
yeah.
But the obviously the biggest cameo. So this was what was kind of surprising to me too, because when the movie starts, you mentioned this already, but Guru Pitka's mantra is Marishka Hargate. That's what he says to everyone, and they say it back to him. And I was just like, oh God, this is going to get old, isn't it? This is going to get so old. Because he does it like 10 times in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he has like this like big meeting where all his followers show up, where he first meets Jessica Alba. And then he's going down a line of celebrities. That's where you see Jessica Simpson, where you see Val Kilmer. And then the actual Mariska Hargitay is there. And that's because so they get to make the joke where he says, Mariska Hargitay. And I was like, oh, okay, well, at least they got that out of the way. Like, right? Like, at least I won't have to put up with this joke for the rest of the movie. Oh, no, he still keeps doing it. The cameo is not the end of it, which that just makes it's weird that they didn't save her cameo for the end. Like, that was a very strange cameo placement, which, again, this is the kind of thing I know that's another small complaint, but it just proves that the movie, they just don't understand comedy, right? They just don't understand structure. They don't understand anything. You save her for the end if he's going to use her name as a mantra all throughout.
Totally. Yeah. Well, you know, Mike Myers is really proud of the film, though, Trev. Back in 2014, he was doing an interview for GQ, and he says, I just make stuff, and sometimes it does well. But there's a lot in that movie, The Love Guru, comedically that I'm really, really proud of. I completely recognize it didn't meet an audience. I just love making stuff, you know? You can't be too attached up, and you can't be too attached down.
Mm-hmm. You can be too attached down. You should be too attached down.
Yeah. I don't know where he's going with that. You know, I wonder if he's just kicking it to the side, you know? He's swerving. What's he going to say? What is he going to say? Is he going to just say, yeah, I was a piece of shit? Nobody says that anymore. You know? So,
like, I guess he made some joke about it on a later SNL appearance, but yeah, I mean, he knows what this movie was, you know, and like, I don't know. Maybe he's proud of it in just the level of he got a movie made, but this is the kind of thing you should not be proud of. I did want to ask too, I know we have some other things to talk about, but you know who I really feel bad for in all this? Can you imagine being, I know you're not going to agree with me because you don't want to feel bad for them in general, but can you imagine being a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the only way you can see your team win the Stanley Cup is to watch The Love Guru?
I know.
That's like really the saddest thing about all of this.
Yeah. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, not only that, but the only way the Leafs will ever win the cup again is if two elephants fuck on the ice to distract the other team.
Yeah. In a completely legal maneuver, clearly.
Yeah. Like, I know we take liberties with the movie and stuff, with this stupid comedies, but I don't know. It just doesn't sit well when you're trying to be. I felt confused. Another thing about this movie that you'll find out if anybody does any research whatsoever. This is recent. Actually, while John Wick 4 came out, and I guess there was somebody, a security guy, that commented on how cool Keanu is to work with, and then he was like,
there was a viral video of Keanu Reeves helping the crew move equipment in
That's what it
between
was.
shots. Yeah,
that's what it was.
And so this guy, like, there's like a radio DJ who had worked as a security guard in the past on Hollywood productions, and he commented where he said, he's like, this is a big deal. This is a big deal when stars are actually like nice and cool on set, because he's like, because I worked as a security guard on The Love Guru, and I got fired just for making eye contact with Mike Myers.
Yeah. Mike Myers' camp denied it and knowing nothing about it. But when we talked about Cat in the Hat, and he gets fed chocolates at his beck and call. Again, this is unchecked ego. You're so right.
Yeah, that's the thing where when I heard that story, when I went and watched the video of him, he went into more detail about it on his radio show, where he kind of explained. He's like, well, the thing is, you know, they told us when he comes in, do not make eye contact with them. But he said, he's like, you have to understand, like, none of us had seen him as this character yet. We didn't know what he was going to look like. Of course, he shows up as this character. You're going to look at him. Yeah. He's like, you know, and then I did, and then a couple hours later, they called me and said, you're gone. You have to, and that's the kind of thing where you hear it and you go like, well, there's probably some kind of miscommunication. He probably got fired for some other reason and didn't realize it. But because we heard those Cat in the Hat stories, then you start to go like, no, I think Mike Myers was, you know, we mentioned in our first Mike Myers episode about what a sweet, humble guy he can seem, and I think that's probably still true to a certain degree. But it does seem that as his star power got bigger, his on-set persona became a little bit of a nightmare.
Totally. Did you, speaking of just his career, you know, kind of treading water for the last few years, I was really excited to see his comeback on Netflix, The Pentaverte. I ended up not watching it. I heard some really bad things about it, and
I was not excited for it. I mean, I saw the trailer, and it just looked like more of what he had become. Yeah. Then I heard nothing good about it. Like, it's like everything I saw was negative, so I just didn't bother.
Yeah, same. And then I know he did a stint on the Gong Show reboot lately. It's not actually on a IMDb. He's never publicly come out saying that it's him. But more makeup, more prosthetics, more voices. I don't know. I don't know. Like, is he I know he's recently even said something about Austin Powers 4 again. Every once in a while, he tests the waters on that one. Would you show up for an Austin Powers 4?
I doubt it. Like, certainly not in the theater at this point. Like,
really?
Why not just wait 2 weeks for it to be on streaming?
Oh.
You know?
That's fair.
And honestly, that seems like a movie that would just probably debut on like Max or something anyways at this point. And anytime I hear him talk about Austin Powers 4, it feels like it really reeks of the same desperation that, you know, we just recently heard like The Rock is going crawling back to the Fast and Furious franchise.
Yeah.
I think if we see an Austin Powers 4, that's not because he really has something more to say with that character. It's because he wants another hit. And that's probably his only way to get it in live action.
He's even talked about a Shrek 5 coming back. So I don't know if Mike Myers is on some sort of redemption tour or what. I mean, I wasn't too hot on Shrek 3. I don't think I've ever seen Shrek 4. Loved the Puss in Boots. Oh, it's bad. Love the newest Puss in Boots. So, like, if the same creative team is behind it and they can rein Mike Myers in, maybe that'd be good. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with Mike Myers doing voice work. I do think, like, the thing with the Netflix show Pentaveret, or however you pronounce it, like Love Guru, Cat in the Hat, it's I saw someone say this, I can't remember who, I wish I could credit it, but they were talking about this movie, The Love Guru, and they were saying the same thing we were saying about how juvenile the humor is. And they were basically saying that Mike Myers is a guy who is not letting his humor grow up with him.
Yeah.
Like, his humor he's not evolving his humor as he gets older. And I think that's like the disappointing thing is we've seen other comedians, you know, like your Bill Murray's, like even your Jim Carrey's, like find new facets of their comedic persona or even their dramatic persona as they get older and like go in new directions and do interesting things. And you look at The Love Guru and you realize that it's like a regression to a kind of juvenile young boy humor. And I wish that it seemed like there was something else under his hood. So if he can't shake that, which that Netflix show seems to suggest he can't or doesn't want to, then he's probably best kept at this point. Like I said, it's not a career killer, but it should be a leading man career killer. He's best kept to small little character roles and bigger ensembles like Inglourious Basterds, or voice work where he can be somewhat guided into, you know, he can still improv, but he's probably still a little bit more guided in what he's doing.
Totally. Yeah, The Love Guru was a huge miss.
I mean, do you agree with me? Like if the dread test, you know, is our test for like the best of the show? Like, do you agree with me that The Love Guru, this is the bottom of the barrel for us? I know you didn't like Buckaroo Banzai and stuff,
sure.
But I mean, this is as bad as it gets, right? I went back through the list. We have not watched anything worse than this.
Yeah, I'd have to look back. Sometimes I forget what we've done here.
I did too. Yeah, that's why I went back.
Yeah, so this is definitely like near or at the bottom for sure. Like, there's no denying that. I guess. I mean, I try to say some nice things sometimes, and I think I did.
I'm not kidding. I tried to be like, you know, we're trying to just have like a normal, like even keel conversation about it. But, but I have to say again, with no hyperbole, I was miserable watching this, and I honestly feel it's like it's on a studio level. This is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, just because of the people in it, and because of knowing that these are all people who've done better work and what this could have been. It's just I couldn't believe it. It's an unfathomable miss.
Yeah, I think when you contextualize it that way, you're not wrong. So yeah, Guru to Electric Boogaloo never happened. Mm-mm. No. And we're all better for it.
Do you think the second one would have been called Love Turu?
Yeah, I don't know. The Love Guru,
it would have been called something like Love Guru 2, like My Balls Smell Funny or something. You know, it's not like...
Yeah, it would be a sexual innuendo / pun.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind. Or just the Love Goo-poo.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll do it for the Love Guru, honestly. There's nothing really to say about that. You know, it sucks because, you know, we talked about Mike Myers in depth in the Cat in the Hat episode and how much we do love the guy. How much, for me especially, he was like, you know, created my sense of humor for the most part. And Mike May-ers, our theme month, was kind of a big whiff, you know?
It was just a reminder that some people have a run, and you can always love that run. You know, it doesn't mean that person will stay consistent, and you are allowed to say goodbye to someone, to like be like, no, I'm not a fan of their later work. This happens more often for me with like musical artists. Musical artists will be really good for a while.
Sure.
Like U2 being a perfect example. I love like U2's 80s stuff. Anything after that starts to get way more shaky, so like that happens a lot with musical artists, but it can happen with actors too. Like I'll never deny the Wayne's World up to Austin Powers 2 for me. Sounds like Austin Powers 3 for you, but that run is undeniable, and I will always revisit and like those movies. But yeah, doesn't mean I have to stick with them, and I won't.
Yeah,
you Love Guru.
Your heroes are never totally sacred,
Right.
They all have faults. And they can fucking whiff so hard that you start to question your love. So of course, that's the end of Mike Mayers, and like I said, like we always say, we love our themes on this podcast. If you've been with us for a long time, we always we do the work. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. We do the work. We plan so far in ahead, which was kind of funny because when we planned this Mike Mayers, we literally planned it like last year. And then it kind of synced up perfectly for the Toronto Maple Leafs making it to the playoffs and past the first round, which was pretty funny. Also, this week, we found out that there was news of like Megan Good like dating Jonathan Majors. And it was just like, when was the last time you heard Megan Good was in the news? Oh, right. When we do the Love Guru. Anyways, we're moving on to our third annual set of movies, Summer Surprise, which is where we throw all of our movies into a big random generator and we do it live on the podcast. This third annual Summer Surprise, though, is a little bit different. Right. Because we are randomizing 5 films in between June and August. But right in the middle, in July, we're taking a break from Summer Surprise to do Jake Gyllenhaal, which I cannot take credit for. It was a friend of mine who brought it up to us, I think, maybe more than a year ago, and we found a spot for it. So July 4th, we're looking at Prince of Persia from 2010, and then July 18th, we're looking at Source Code from 2011. Yeah. So Jake Gyllenhaal is a fucking great theme name.
Our solemn promise to you, the listener, is if there's an actor whose name can be made into a pun with a month, and they've got some failures on their filmography, we will do it at some point.
Yeah, it's funny because like about a week ago, I think I spent like an hour just going through all our movies, and me and Trev have a shared note where we throw each other ideas and we approve or disapprove or whatever. And I think I spent like just so much time going through and grouping movies together and coming up with puns and coming up with this, and so we can place things along the way. It's kind of like, it's part of the fun of doing this, honestly. Mm-hmm. So, Summer Surprise, let's do this. Okay.
All right.
So we got 5 spots, and I'll give you the date, and then we'll randomize. Okay, so we are looking at June 6th. We at Failure to Franchise will be looking at The Seeker, The Dark is Rising.
Oh, man, back to our beloved YA.
Of course. I didn't even know what the hell that was, but seeing that name plus a colon and then Rise, that's a book.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's a book. All right. June 20th, we're looking at Maximum Ride.
Oh boy, that is another YA.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's like about angels, I think. I believe. Something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
Kids with Wings, I believe.
Oh, great. Okay, now jumping over to August 1st, we'll be looking at Surf Ninjas.
All right.
This one you threatened me about 3 years ago with, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I apologize.
Yes. Oh, this summer's gonna suck.
But hey, look, that is a very summer kind of movie. Like, it's very, very appropriate, I think.
Okay.
The surf, the beach,
Ninjas.
I believe Rob Schneider's in it, so you have that to look forward to.
Great. Okay, August 15th, we're going to be looking at The Haunted Mansion. Timely.
Oh, yes, that is perfect.
That's cool. Okay, I like that. We're doing Haunted Mansion. Yeah. When does the newest Haunted Mansion come out?
Can you check that? This will actually be after it, I think. I think that comes out in July, but, we'll
cool.
do a little post-mortem on it, and maybe we'll be able to compare the two.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion we'll be looking at. Just
Yes.
To clarify that.
And then August 29th, capping off Summer Surprise, the 3rd annual edition. Artemis Fowl.
Oh, no. Oh my God! Should we say like?
Yeah, let's save it. No, let's save it. Okay, yeah, let's save it. Let's save it. Can we redo all these picks? Can we call an audible and just fucking trash this one? We'll re-record. Oh my God!
Look, Artemis Fowl. We're gonna have to do it eventually, Chris. So
yeah. Well, listeners, hopefully you can stick with us. If you're new, please stick with us with the summer. If you're old listeners, you understand what we've been through and what we'll be through again and again and again. But at least we'll have Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah. You know, actually, like, to be fair, like, all these are, like, not movies I would be thrilled about watching normally, but I do like that there's, like, some variety in here again. Like, that's the nice thing about summer. We've been doing these themes, and it's kind of nice to get back to, like, just a hodgepodge of things.
Totally.
You know,
totally.
Surf Ninjas is not like the Haunted Mansion, which is not like Maximum Ride. Now, Maximum Ride might be very much like The Seeker, The Darkest Rising, but...
Anyway, okay, well, follow along at F2F Pod. That's at F2, the number 2F Pod. That's on all the socials, so like us there, like us everywhere. Also, rate, review, whatever you do. A star rating would be awesome. And give us a star rating before we talk about all this junk in the summer. That'd be great. And then, just join the tribe, hit that subscribe, and stick along our absolute depression. So, yeah, this was a fun conversation. This is a bad movie, but I liked how loosey-goosey we were about it, and I don't think it deserves any more than that. So
no,
we'll keep it at that. Yeah. Anyways, I guess you're gonna say go Golden Knights, I guess.
Yeah, go Golden Knights. Please win so that, like I said, you want the winner to be the person who beat you. That's my.
It's true. It's true. When you lose to the champions, it hurts a little less.
Yes.
Yeah.